Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshop, where we are getting together in the middle of the week to learn more about technology. My name is John Kennedy, and I'm your host for these workshops, and our lady with all the questions, as always, is Judy Tallur. Today, our topic for this workshop is QR codes and more. Our presenter is John Krout. John has been with us many times on Wednesday workshops and Saturday safaris. He's with the Potomac Area Technology Group, the PATX, and he lives in Virginia and has done many different presentations for us. Today, he's going to be doing more on QR codes. QR codes provide a great variety of info and are popular for communicating universal resource locators, URLs, also known as web page addresses. Find out how your smartphone can read QR codes and the other barcodes. And when you learn to do that, check out this barcode that's right here on the QR code. In particular, learn about your info stored in the barcode on the back of your driver's license or your state ID. Some stores, including grocery stores where the presenter lives, now scan that barcode when alcohol is purchased. The scan obtains a great deal more personal info than your birthday. John's going to give us a lot of great information on QR codes and how they help us in our everyday lives. John, we'll turn things over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I want to mention a couple of things that I found surprising that the Geeks on Tour mentioned. One of them is Peter Diamandis, who happens to be my fraternity brother. I was acquainted or kept up an acquaintance with him many years ago. I have not been in touch with him for several years, but he is a remarkable guy. And the second thing is the role of QR codes in certain types of transactions. And they mentioned those during the presentation. So we have even more reasons to learn how to use our cell phones to scan QR codes. I'm going to start my presentation now. I have to do that off screen and get the slideshow running. All right, there we go. Now, I'm back in the Zoom meeting. I'm going to share the screen. When you first see it, it will be blank. And I won't leave it that way for long, but I just want to make you aware that that does not mean that your computer or the Zoom is failing in any way. Okay, let's see here. I do not have to optimize anything. We'll go ahead and share that. And then let's see. There's the title screen, QR codes and more. The more refers to other types of similar codes. And I'm going to take a moment now to hide the floating meeting controls on my screen. Now, why might this topic be useful to you? Well, you've heard one thing already. If you want to get involved in using a Bitcoin ATM, for instance, or you want to transfer information directly from one wallet to another. But they're also useful for comparison shopping apps on smartphones or tablets to scan UPC codes and find out where the same product might be available for a lower price. QR is an example of a two-dimensional barcode. And there is another type called PDF 417 that is used on the back of your driver's license. And as the other John K. mentioned in his introduction, there's a lot of information about you in that driver's license two-dimensional code. And I'm going to show you a way to find out exactly what's there. You can also read linear barcodes, and that's an UPC as an example, and 2D codes using free apps on your phone. You can even create custom QR codes. Many people now expect these to appear on websites, flyers, advertisements, presentations, and so forth. And I found them very valuable in my presentations. You're going to see a lot of them here that you may wish to scan. And so one of the things I will do for you is teach you how to do that with your phone. Okay, it's sort of an agenda, an outline of what we're going to cover. Define a barcode, types and uses of linear barcodes, UPC, and there are many others as it happens. Two-dimensional codes, including QR, data matrix, and PDF 417. Several different other types exist as well. I'm going to show you at least one other. How your smartphone can read QR codes and apps for reading not only QR codes, but other types, linear and two-dimensional. Advanced uses of QR codes and PDF 417 codes. We'll look at those in some detail, particularly as it relates to healthcare. And we'll look at ways to create QR codes using websites, using your phone. And in some cases, at least for Android, you can do that without even having an app installed if you have a recent version of the Android operating system. Finally, if you're involved in managing a user group or you would like to provide suggestions to your user group leadership, we'll look at creative uses of QR codes for user groups. And not only that, I didn't list it in the agenda, but there is an outdoor game based on QR codes, and we'll look at that as well. So now let's talk about what is a barcode. Basically, it's a machine-readable representation of some useful data. It can be very short data. It can be very long data. And making that data represented in the barcode visible, particularly with printing, makes it very easy to replicate that data. Now, an early example, some I'm sure we're all familiar with, is Uniform Product Code, or UPC. For a while, the U.S. Postal Service was also heavily promoting its format of a zip barcode, which made it much easier for sorting machines to sort mail. And I think those two, both of which are linear arrangement of bars representing numerals, really introduced the phrase barcode into the American lexicon. Barcodes are definitely more reliable for accurate machine readability than text scanning, even using fonts like MICR-A, which is the font used for your bank's routing number and your account number on checks. And those checks, of course, use micro A to make it easier for machines to sort the checks. A huge variety of types of barcodes and two-dimensional codes exist. The two-dimensional codes basically came about because of the need to encode names, addresses, and other information, as well as numerals. Here's an example of a uniform product code. You might recognize the characters that appear above the barcode. I shot this photo of a copy of the CD Yellow Submarine, the soundtrack from the movie. And these now appear on every mass-produced item for retail sale in the US. And in many other countries as well, because it's been adopted very widely. That often happens when the US adopts a standard, other countries eventually follow suit. Now, of course, the major purpose of the Uniform Product Code is to scan up checkouts, or is to be able to scan the thing at checkout. And that speeds up the checkout process tremendously. If you're old enough to remember what it was like before UPC, you know what I'm talking about. In addition, it has also facilitated self-checkout. The bar width and the spacing in the barcode represents the digits 0 through 9. There was a company called Symbol Technology, or abbreviated Symboltech, that made a fortune selling barcode scanners to hook into electronic cash registers when this was first introduced. Other types of linear barcodes came along. Here's a Ticketmaster ticket a physical ticket that has a barcode on it that can be scanned at the point of entry to a movie theater, for instance, or a concert or whatever. It is called type ITF. Amazon shipping labels. They actually contain a couple of different codes. This one is called code 128, and it does allow inclusion of uppercase letters, but it's not very space efficient, so you don't include a lot of letters. This one happens to encode that string of characters you see next to it. Here's another code on a Seagate hard drive. I found its type is code 39, and it also includes uppercase letters. Again, with the same constraint that it's not very space efficient. Here's a luggage identifier strip. If you've traveled by air and you've checked your luggage, you get one of these attached to the luggage, and that long string of numerals identifies you and where you're going, so the luggage can arrive at the same time, we hope. Along the way, particularly if you're have a flight that's in multiple parts, where you have to change planes at different airports, the linear barcode allows rapid machine identification of the unique ID, and then through a central database, that ID turns into your name and where you are destined to go. So this is a great help for automatic sorting and routing of luggage. And it happens to be the same code type that is used by Ticketmaster for physical tickets, code ITF. Even things in your wallet have these linear barcodes on them. Customer membership and loyalty cards. And I pulled 3 out of my wallet just to show you. The BJ's discount club card is on the top. It has a barcode on it that identifies you. Even cards that have mag stripes also have these linear barcodes. The card in the middle is from Funland, and that's an entertainment complex in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And the one on the back, which is actually far more valuable to me than the Funland card, is the interagency senior pass for national park and national forest admission. I enjoy visiting national parks, and this gets me in without having to pay an admission fee. You buy it once and it's good for life. It too has a mag stripe on it, but the barcode is there to act as a backup when the magnetic stripe is corrupted. And that's been known to happen from time to time, particularly if you put the mag stripe next to your smartphone. All right, eventually two-dimensional codes came along, and they were much denser, so they packed more information into a finite space. And these can contain uppercase and lowercase letters and numerals and punctuation. This is an example of a PDF 417 barcode. Incidentally, just because it has those magic letters PDF in it, it's not related to Adobe. And its aspect ratio is flexible, which means you can arrange it to be very long and skinny on a long and skinny product or part like you see here. Data matrix. This appears also on some Amazon shipping labels. These are square, like QR codes, but have lines on 2 edges. You can see that on the left and on the bottom on this one. Aztec. I only came across this within the last 2 months. My daughter had an outpatient procedure. I was the designated driver, and I found on her wristband a code I didn't recognize, but I had an app on my phone that could tell me not only what type it was, but what was in it, including her medical record number. Now, these are also square, but you can identify them because of the concentric squares in the middle. That's called an Aztec. Now, let's talk about the main event here. Quick response codes. That's what QR stands for. These are widely used for a great variety of purposes. You can encode a vCard record, and you can encode a complete email, addressee, subject, and body. You can encode a Wi-Fi network, name and password, so that people who scan it will automatically log in if they are in range. You can encode a wide variety of other information as well. These are square, and you'll notice they have 3 squares in the corners. So that's how you can identify it as a QR code. One of the things I found when I bought an online movie ticket to attend the movie The Martian when it came out, and that online movie ticket on my phone had a QR code that could be scanned at the point of entry to let me into the theater. So that's another use of QR codes. Digital boarding passes for major airlines. I have a Delta Airlines app on my phone, and when I generate a digital boarding pass, it includes a QR code that occupies almost the entire screen, makes it easy for scanning at TSA to get into the secure area within the airport to go to the gate. And finally, acting as a literal boarding pass instead of a paper boarding pass when you are ready to get onto the plane. Now, I've mentioned several uses of QR codes, but they all have one feature. They save you the time and risk of typing a URL, an email address, a Wi-Fi password, and more. Why do I say risk? Because we've all had the experience of typing something wrong. So the risk is typos that are aggravating and require you to type things again. So if we get it right in the QR code, then when you scan it, you'll get it right too. The example I've shown here is a QR code that I generated from the Contacts app in my Android phone. And because the particular contact record that I was converting to a QR code contained a photo, the QR code also contains the photo of that person. And of course, the longer the info, the greater the typo risk. At the meeting place of my user group here in Northern Virginia, we actually meet in a facility provided by George Mason University. And as it happens, they use for some of their Wi-Fi networks, they use a password that changes 3 times a year, and it's typically about 35 characters long, and a lot of it is nonsense. So that really makes typing a very difficult process to get right the first time. That's why I think QR codes for Wi-Fi login is so valuable, because they eliminate that typographic frustration. I mentioned that Android Samsung Contacts app generated this QR code, and it can generate a vCard QR code with name, address, phone numbers, even email address for anybody in contacts, including yourself. And that could be very valuable when you want to hand that over to another person. They can just simply scan the vCard QR code that you generate from your Contacts app. I think every business card should include a vCard QR code containing all the text info on the business card. That makes it so much easier to put that into contacts of the recipient of the card. It turns out QR was not the first type of code to be aimed at consumers. Here's a picture of a device called a QCat. This was a joint effort of a company called Digital Convergence and Radio Shack. Radio Shack distributed these scanners with a USB interface for free. And they had an advantage at the time. They had over 7,000 locations in the US where these could be given away. Now, they were used to scan a linear barcode that identified a product so that you could get more information about the product. The problem was that it was only used by Radio Shack. Other retailers did not adopt it, and consumers did not understand why it was useful because Radio Shack didn't really explain it very well. This is a photo of the QCat that I've had in my hands or in my desk for many years. All right, now, the next major phase here. your smartphone and tablet can read QR codes and not only tell you what's inside, but in some cases, make direct use of the information, such as displaying a web page, inserting a vCard record into your contacts list, or even logging you into local Wi-Fi. Now, at this point, I would like we're going to go through an exercise here to make sure your smartphone or tablet is fully prepared to scan QR codes, and you'll learn how to do it step by step. So we're gonna take you through, for both Android and iPhone, an effort to make sure that you're configured properly to scan QR codes on those devices. If it turns out you have a much older version of the Android or iOS operating system on your devices, we'll show you an app that you can install immediately that will let you scan QR codes. And just by the way, in the rest of this presentation, there are a great many QR codes that you may wish to scan. All right, we're going to start with Android. Pull out your phone, log in, and open the camera app. It'll probably look, well, it won't have the sticker in it as a visual a visual image, but it will have the bar across the top. And that's important because we're going to use the gear icon in the upper left corner. That allows us to look at settings and make sure that we're properly configured to scan a QR code with the camera app. Okay, so you've got your phone out, you've logged in, you open the camera app. The next thing you do is click the gear button in the upper left corner. I've circled it there to make it very clear. Now, when you do that, the camera settings screen opens. It's probably going to look a lot like what you see here below the depiction of the camera app. And there is one switch. If you're using a recent version of the Android operating system, there's one switch that controls whether or not your camera app will be allowed to scan QR codes. I've circled it here. You need to if you see that switch, you need to make sure it's turned on. It's slid to the right. If it's slid to the left, you just use your finger to pull that switch over to the right, and you'll be ready to scan QR codes. Now, if you don't see the switch, that means you're using an older version of the Android operating system. Don't panic. What we're going to do in the next slide is show you the app that you should install immediately in order to scan QR codes. So, like I said, if the switch isn't there, then you are using an older version of the Android operating system. Don't worry. What we're going to do now is open the Play Store app on your phone. In the search field up at the top of the screen, type this word, Qrbot. It's pronounced Qrbot, and tap the search button. Now, when you do that, your Play Store app will take you to the page where the Qrbot app is described. And the top of the page is, well, the search results, rather, are going to look something like this. And you can see the QR code is bounded by a blue square with rounded corners. And very important, it's published by TCAPS, T-E-A-C-A-P-P-S. When you find that in the search results, tap the install button, which I've circled here. Install that free Qrbot app now, because that's going to let you scan the QR codes in the rest of this presentation. Please go ahead and do that. Okay, now we're going to switch and go to iPhone. And this is how we make sure that the iPhone or iPad camera app is properly configured. It's really not very different, except that instead of opening the camera app to adjust its settings, we have to open the Settings app on the iPhone or iPad. And when you do open the settings app, the search field at the top may or may not be visible. To make it visible, you scroll your finger down and then up, and the settings app screen will then show you the search field at the top, just like I've circled here in this image. When you see that search field, click on it and type the word camera, C-A-M-E-R-A. And search results appear. You're going to see two different apps that have the same icon in that search results. One of them is camera, and one of them is privacy. Do not click on the privacy app. That's irrelevant. Tap the camera app icon. Then the camera settings screen opens, like I've shown you here. And yes, pretty close to the top of that screen, you're going to find a scan QR code switch. And you want to make sure that switch is on. So if it's off, you just tap it and that'll turn it on. Now, if that switch is not present in your camera settings screen, again, not to panic, the next slide will show you the app that you need to install in order to scan QR codes. So if the switch isn't present, what it means is you are using an iOS version prior to iOS 11. Again, not to panic. Open the App Store on your iOS, your Apple device. We're going to search for the same app, Qrbot. Type that in the search field. In the App Store, and I have no explanation for this. I don't know why they changed the name, but it doesn't say Qrbot. It says QR code and barcode scanner. You'll see a search result like what I've shown you here. You'll see a QR code with a green square around it with rounded corners. And the publisher is TCAPS. However, when you install this app on your phone, its name is Qrbot. So how do you install it? If you've never installed an app before from the App Store, the little icon I've circled with the arrow pointing down is the icon to download and install the Qrbot app. So you tap that icon and the installation, the download and installation process will begin. Please do that now. That's very important because the remainder of this presentation has a lot of QR codes in it. Okay, now, once you've done all that, we've got 4 different cases here. We've got recent Android where the camera app is going to be used. We've got older Android where Qrbot is going to be used. We've got recent Apple devices where the camera app will be used, and we've got older Apple devices that are now installing the Qrbot app. So here's the preparation. Once you've got that app in front of you, here's the preparation. For Android 10, 11, and 12, the camera app now is ready to take a photo. If you're still in the settings screen, just tap the left arrow to move out of that, and you should be back at the point where you're ready to take a photo, where you can see through the screen the view that you would photograph. Now, for Android Qrbot users, you start that app that you've just installed and tap the scan using the camera button that shows up in the main screen for Qrbot. Do that. Apple, have a typo here. It should say 11 through 15. Those are the iOS versions that allow the camera app to scan QR codes. All you have to do is get out of settings and open the camera app. And if the camera app is not ready to take a photo, do what's needed to take a photo in that using that app. Now, finally, Apple Qrbot users, you start the Qrbot app that you've just installed. You tap OK to grant permission to access the camera. Now, at that point, all 4 cases, you should be ready to take a photo. Okay. And here's what you're going to do. However, you won't need to press the shutter button. The app you're using will automatically recognize a QR code when you point your phone at this QR code. This happens to be the URL for the webpage of my user group, the Potomac Area Technology and Computer Society. So scan that, and your phone will do something, but when it does that, when it pops up some information, stop. We're going to cover that on the next slide. So again, you point your camera app or the Qrbot app, whichever one you're using, at the QR code. You probably need to get fairly close to it so it occupies more than half of the screen. As I mentioned before, no need to tap the shutter button. Once the app recognizes that it sees a QR code, it will scan that code. And it'll pop up a button. We're going to look at those 4 different types of buttons in the next slide. All right, if you're running Android Qrbot, you can either tap the URL itself or tap the button Open Website, which I've circled for you here. This is what pops up in Android Qrbot. Now we're going to look at those of you who have recent versions of the Android OS. The Android camera will pop up this at the bottom of the screen, and you can tap the web address button that I circled here. Apple Qrbot, you can tap the URL, which I've circled here, or you can tap the phrase Open Website, and it will open it in the web browser on your phone. Finally, Apple Camera, they put it at the top, and it's kind of low contrast, but I circled it here for you. You just tap that button, and it will open the website in your Safari browser on your device. Okay, now, I've mentioned these briefly earlier. Sometimes you can find a QR code containing a V card, and when you scan that, at least with your camera devices, I think Qrbot does this as well, it will insert the contact info contained in the QR code as a new record in your Contacts app. And that's valuable in many cases. I'll explain it more a little bit further as we go on. You can also find an entire email encoded in a QR code. And when you scan that QR code, it will open your email app so you can edit and send the email. I mentioned Wi-Fi logins, and that the Wi-Fi login QR code will contain the Wi-Fi network name, also known as SSID, and the password for logging in. And that will allow you to connect your device to that Wi-Fi, assuming that you are in range of that Wi-Fi. There are many other types also. Now, there are other barcode types out there, or two-dimensional code types. I mentioned data matrix and PDF 417 and Aztec. I use the Qrbot app to scan those other types. It will tell me the type that I'm scanning, and it will also tell me the contents of what's in those types. It will not automatically execute by installing a vCard or connecting you to Wi-Fi, but it does have buttons to allow you to do that. Some of the contents, we're going to look at one in detail, particularly in PDF 417, can be a huge amount of information. And it turns out Qrbot can also be used to create QR codes. So if you find yourself wanting to create a QR code for logging into your Wi-Fi network at home, you can consider doing that. Turns out it doesn't actually do that correctly, and I'll point that out later on. but you can create a great variety of QR code types. And I already mentioned that it works on current and prior versions of both Android and iOS. Now, why is it that you might need a code reader like Qrbot? Well, for one thing, there's that giant PDF 417 on the back of your driver's license or your state ID. And as I mentioned earlier, and the other John K mentioned in my introduction, any retailer who scans your driver's license or ID PDF 417 code will get all that information about you, and there's a lot. So it's worth knowing what's being given out. Also, you can explore the encoded world all around you. You can create your own QR codes, all with Qrbot. Now, we're going to go in depth into two examples of advanced use of these codes. The first one is US driver's licenses. And I'm going to show you how to understand what's in that PDF 417 on the back of yours. Here's my Virginia driver's license, and on the back there's actually two codes. The one on the left is PDF 417. The one on the right contains only numerals, and it is a linear barcode. It identifies the particular driver's license record number. It turns out when you renew your license or you get a duplicate, those will have separate, different record identifiers on them. That's encoded in that linear barcode. But that is type 120, code 128. And the other one is the one that we really care about because it's got a lot of personal information. It's got everything that's on the front of your license and more. So this contains a tremendous amount of stuff about you. And some Virginia retailers are now scanning this when a customer purchases alcohol. Local grocery store does that. Now, there is an organization, a trade association called the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, abbreviation AAMVA, and they set the standard for how the information is organized and what has to appear in that PDF 417 code on a driver's license. And lucky for us, they've published a PDF document, yes, Adobe this time, that allows you to understand the information that you will see when you scan that PDF 417 code. That information is in a downloadable PDF doc, and that explains the standard and how to understand the organization of the information. That doc does help police quickly validate the driver's license data and check for wants and warrants, but obviously it's now being used by retailers as well. Now here's a picture of what I saw using Qrbot when I scanned that PDF 417 code. It is organized as lines of text, and each line has a prefix or 3 or 4 characters. Now, for those of you who have been around computers for as long as I have, you know that this is an example of what I call mainframe culture. This is the way that mainframers tended to identify text and its purpose in a document that contains multiple fields of text. There's been much more modern and useful organizations of information that have been invented since then, primarily XML. But this has the advantage of brevity, which means it doesn't take long to transmit or receive. Now, each prefix identifies the data on the corresponding line, and you can see 1, 2, 3, about 5 lines down, you can see the beginning of my last name and then the beginning of my first name. Now, the doc that explains what those prefixes mean is found online, and I'm going to show you that how to download it in just a moment. since you need the doc to understand the purpose of each line in your driver's license PDF code, you can obtain the PDF document from the AAMVA on this webpage, and it is free, by the way. There's the URL. It's pretty long, and you know what I'm going to do next. I'm going to show you a QR code that you can scan so that you can download the PDF document to your phone and read it. There it is. So I'll take a minute for you guys to scan that code. All right, the design standard is updated from time to time. They have an industry meeting every year, and sometimes stakeholders in this information will propose changes. So I think it's on. I can't remember what the version number is right now, but it does get updated occasionally, not necessarily every year. Now, in the document itself, there's a lot of other stuff going on because they define the layout of the front of the driver's license and what needs to appear there. So the actual preface explanations appear in Exhibit 3, which is near the end of the document. Here you're going to see the first few lines of Exhibit 3. It runs for several pages. And it turns out in the second column, the column labeled Element ID, which I've circled here, that column contains all the prefixes and then the more or less English language description of the meaning of each prefix appears to the right. And it turns out some of them are mandatory and some of them are not. Now, we're going to take a look at a very sophisticated use of QR codes in a record of COVID-19 vaccinations called the Smart Health Card. The first record that most of us encountered when we got vaccinated is a paper vaccination record, also known as a CDC card, because they're the ones who publish the card. And those cards became very important when vaccinations were first available. And the general media then very quickly reported a number of posts online encouraging card fraud, particularly blank card images so people could print their own, and valid vaccination batch data to fill in on the card. So this became quite an issue. And of course, the various organizations providing vaccinations wanted to find something that wasn't so easily forged. And of course, the publicity surrounding the forgeries was widely reported. It became fixed in the public mind, and they wanted to make sure that nobody ever accused, they, meaning the vaccinated individuals, wanted to make sure that nobody ever accused them of having a fraudulent card. So there's an organization called the Commons Project, and they developed a QR code-based solution called the Smart Health Card. Now, last week, July 5th, I checked and found that the Smart Health Card is now provided by 25 states in the United States. When I first found it, which was last October, it was only 6 states, but it happened to include Virginia. So I was able to download from the Virginia Department of Health website my own Smart Health Card, which is in, we're going to look at it in detail here in just a moment. But in addition, Washington, D.C. has adopted it, Puerto Rico has adopted it, all Canadian provinces, and certain large pharmacies, including Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid Combo, and Kaiser Permanente. If you got vaccinated at a pharmacy, you have to go to their website to download your Smart Health Card. And here's what it looks like. I blanked out my date of birth, but The major thing that's in the card, aside from what we call clear text, meaning human readable information on the vaccination sequence. This is the first one I downloaded, by the way. There is a QR code, and obviously, if you look at it, you can tell it's big. It's got a lot of information in it. And there's a reason for that, a very important reason, and it's worth explaining because you need to understand it and why it makes this so secure, so fraud-proof. This PDF document, by the way, when you download it, does not update automatically. So if you get a booster dose, you have to download it again, and it will be updated by the company or the state health department that manages your records. So I got, at the end of October of last year, I got my first booster dose, and I downloaded an updated PDF that showed it. It was available, actually, on that day, it was available about 3 hours after I got the shot. Pretty good. Now, I'm going to use the Virginia Department of Health as an example, but I think you'll find that most other organizations that provide the Smart Health Card do something similar. Virginia Department of Health, VDH, maintains a central database of vaccination records for Virginia residents who were vaccinated by local government health departments in Virginia, which was my case. They offer the secure Smart Health Card to document and improve your vaccination status. The first thing we're going to look at is the download process. And there's actually two different parts to it. Virginia offers a particular webpage, vaccinate.virginia.gov, for people to download their own personal Smart Health Card PDF files. Now, that's the first part. You download it, make multiple, store it in multiple places. So you'll still have a copy if your computer breaks down, your phone dies. I have it on a couple of flash drives. I have it on the network attached storage here in my home, and I have it on my computer. There's the only reason that the Smart Health Card is useful, though, is if there's something available to read that PDF file. And as it turns out, I tried reading it with Qrbot and it just failed completely. There's a reason for that, and it ties into the fraud proofness, the security that's built into the QR code. There is an app, a free app that's available for both Apple and Android called the Smart Health Card Verifier App, and it will read and verify the QR code contents in a Smart Health Card. It turns out the contents are encrypted. I scanned it, and the first time I did, well, you're seeing the result here. This is what was displayed. Essentially, this result, when it doesn't provide a URL and doesn't open an app on your phone, it means that your phone doesn't have the ability to read the information in the QR code. I saw a very long string of digits. Now, that's the encrypted data. I can't read it because I don't have the encryption key. When I tapped it, my phone told me it lacked the appropriate app to display the QR code data in a form that I could understand. Well, let's find out why. It turns out all the information in that QR code is encrypted, and not just in the old-fashioned method where the same encryption key used to encrypt it is also used to decrypt it, make it readable again. That's not how we do things anymore. The encryption is modern dual key asymmetric encryption invented by Rivest and his co-inventors, Shamir and Edelman at MIT. And this was a long time ago, actually. He was aiming at a specific problem, how to make email secure and how to prove to a judge who sent it and who received it. but it has found many other uses in American life. And I got to say, those three guys, just by the way, if you may have recognized, the initials of the inventors are RSA, and they formed a company called RSA to commercialize this very, very advanced dual key asymmetric encryption. And they made a lot of money. The fundamental concept is that you have two different keys. You have one key that encrypts, and the related second key decrypts what the first key encrypted. It also works the other way. If you have the related second key, you can encrypt, and only the first key can decrypt. This, believe it or not, you've been using for quite a while. If you do banking online, if you do stock brokerage access online, if for that matter, if you look at CNN or Google, they all use this technology, and it's the basis for HTTP secure, which is abbreviated HTTPS when you access a web page that uses this technology. And it does that to make sure that a person who is in the middle of the communications, who may be a computer administrator on a server that passes along the information between the web server and your computer, none of them can read either what is sent to you or what you send back to those websites. And of course, without making sure that is secure, we wouldn't have online banking. We wouldn't have online access to stock brokerages. There's a lot of other things that we wouldn't have. So we can thank Revest and his partners for that. Specifically, when you have two keys, what happens is this: we treat one of the keys as private. Only the key pair owner knows it. And the related other key is public. It's shared by the owner of the two keys with anybody who may need to communicate with the owner. And as it turns out, that's pretty fundamental to most online security situations, but specifically including the Smart Health Card PDF. So anything encrypted with either of the two keys can only be successfully decrypted using the related other keys. And by the way, that's also the fundamental aspect of security in blockchain. Now, here's how it works when you have two keys. An owner of dual keys wants to exchange encrypted information with his friends, his business partners, some defined group of people. So the owner sends the public key to those people. And the owner, when he wants to send information to those people that is in some sense needs security, he encrypts with his private key. Then he sends it out. It's gobbledygook to anybody who looks at it. The recipients who have the public key sent to them previously can decrypt successfully, but only if they have that public key. This is the same process used by HTTPS, which I mentioned. It's the same process used to secure blockchain records. And as it happens, it's also the same process used by virtual private networks, VPNs, to make sure that the information sent between you and the VPN server is gobbledygook to anybody who receives it in between, such as your internet service provider. So in a nutshell, the reason that we do this dual key encryption is to provide security. Nobody who receives it without owning the public key can understand it. Likewise, anybody who receives a response can only read it if they have the private key, and only the key pair owner has the private key. So here's what I think is going on in Smart Health Card. Unfortunately, the Commons project does not provide this level of detail, but I'm pretty sure this is what they're doing. Each Smart Health Card issuer, meaning State Health Department or those pharmacies, owns a pair of related keys, and they send their public key to the Commons project. So that public key is available on Commons project servers. Now, here's why. Each issuer, state health department, or the pharmacy, encrypts each vaccination record that is encoded in the QR code with its private key and creates that QR code containing that encrypted record. It's pretty big, obviously. The Verifier app that reads that QR code doesn't have the capability to decode it. What it does is send the encrypted QR code image to Commonhealth servers. That's part of the Commons project, Commonhealth. And those servers have the public key, and then they can use that key to decrypt the contents of the QR code. The Verifier app, therefore, needs to use the internet. It has to be on Wi-Fi or the cell phone network in order to send the encrypted QR code image to the Commonhealth servers. So hacking the contents of an encrypted QR code can be done successfully if and only if the hacker has an issuer's private key. Since it's private, they don't have it. If they hack without that key, the QR code automatically becomes invalid. The Smart Health Card Verifier app sends the encrypted QR code to the Commons project servers, as I mentioned, and they use the public key to decrypt the QR code contents. Now, the servers then send the decrypted verification back to the Verifier app. It's a very small block of data. It'll have the name of the person identified in that encrypted QR code. It'll have the birth date of that person encrypted in whose data is encrypted in the QR code, and it'll have a verification result. This information coming back to the Verifier app may also be dual key encrypted. I'm not sure about that, but I think it's more likely than not. So we can now answer the question, why is that QR code so big? It contains a lot of text data, not just about the vaccination batch and the recipient, but also about the issuer of the Smart Health Card. It's also highly redundant, which allows a high degree of likelihood of accuracy of the decoding if the imaging is somehow challenged, maybe because the paper has been wrinkled or the QR code has faded on paper. The redundancy provides a high degree of error correction. The encryption process itself inserts some additional information. So that barcode or that QR code is very large for several good reasons. Now, when you get a Smart Health Card PDF file for yourself, what can you do with it? Well, you can save it on your computer. You can put it on your phone, and you can use your phone to show it whenever entry to some event or meeting requires you to prove that you have received vaccinations. Turns out I'm going to visit British Columbia in a couple of weeks. And I found out from the Canadian authorities that I will need to show that QR code to the Canadian app called ArriveCan, which allows you to get approval in advance to enter Canada. You can put a shortcut on your phone's home screen so that you can find it quickly, find that Smart Health Card and display it. There are other ways to use it on your phone as well. You can use it in a wallet app. And here's an example of a wallet app. I copied my Smart Health Card to my iPhone 10. And as it happened, although I'm not very familiar with the Apple Wallet, I found that the summary of my Smart Health Card PDF and its QR code appeared in Apple Wallet on my iPhone 10. Just opened it up and there, it was already inside the Wallet app. And it can be displayed from there. The Commons project has also published a free Commonhealth Wallet app for Android. So if you don't want to use, say, Google Wallet, you can download Commonhealth Wallet for free and use that to store your QR code from your smart health card. Samsung Pay and Google Pay will also do that. The state of New York got into it as well. They published its own wallet app called the New York State Excelsior Pass Wallet. And they published a corresponding Verifier app of their own as well. Now, I will say this. I installed that app when I got my latest booster shot, which was, last Friday. I downloaded the Verifier app, or I downloaded the smart health card with the update for the second booster shot. And it turns out New York State Excelsior Pass Wallet would not allow me to store my smart health card in the Excelsior Pass Wallet app. Why? I think it works only with smart health cards that are issued in the state of New York. That's my guess. I don't really have a way to confirm that because the Excelsior Pass Wallet would not tell me any details of why it refused. Now, the Verifier app, let's look at that again. The free app is available to the general public on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. It uses network services, as I mentioned. The app sends the QR code image, I said contents here, but it's really the image, to the Commons project servers, specifically the Commons Health servers for decryption. Now, the verification result is sent back to the app. As I mentioned earlier, it may be using the public key of the Commons project to decrypt that result if it's encrypted by the Commons project servers, the verification result. If no network is available, like airplane mode, for instance, then the Verifier app will not scan anything because it can't communicate with the Commons Health servers. Here's the app itself. Here's the icon for the app. And also when you start up the app, it'll look like this with a big blue button that says scan vaccination record. The app icon for iOS 15 is identical. There's the button to begin the scan of a smart health card QR code. It'll return very easy to understand results that are coded in colors. It'll either be green or yellow or red. Green means the scanned barcode is valid and the issuer is trusted. That's the only result I've ever seen when I've used the smart health card verifier. Yellow means the barcode is valid, but for some reason, the issuer of the smart health card is not trusted by the Commons Health servers. And finally, red means the barcode is just plain not valid. So the latter two, you might not be able to get in to whatever meeting or other event you want to attend, or get into Canada for that matter. But green means you're cool. Now, here's an example of a forgery attempt that I think could be done if you got hold of the PDF. Now, hand alteration of the encrypted QR code makes the QR code impossible to decrypt. So nobody who does not have access to the private QR code of the issuer will be able to alter that QR code in any automatic fashion. Altering it by hand will always fail. However, you could alter the print in the PDF file. That's relatively easy. You could substitute a different name and a different birth date. So if you did that, what's to prevent it from being accepted by the Verifier app? Well, it's very simple. The Verifier app would say the QR code is valid, but it also returns the name and birth date of the person identified in the QR code, and that would be different from the forged name and birth date in the clear text in the PDF document. and therefore the PDF document has been forged. Now, for those of us like my user group who are required by our meeting site's landlord to scan proof of forgery, scan the proof of, or at least read the proof of vaccination. The Verifier app, unfortunately, does not keep a record of its verification scan results. And there's a very good reason for that. It's legal. So organizations like mine that must keep a record of who attended and who proved that they have been vaccinated must find another way to do that. Now, if you happen to be the person on duty using the Verifier app, you could use a voice recorder app to simply dictate the name and verification result for everybody who's coming into the meeting. The user of the Verifier app and that recording app on a phone would just simply speak the individual name and the verification result. There are apps that will allow you to record the screen on a phone or a tablet. Doing so while running the Verifier app does violate federal HIPAA health privacy laws because it captures vaccination details and the name and the birth date at the time each smart health card is presented. So we can't do a screen recorder, but I think there's something we could do other than a voice recorder. I think the Verifier app might be allowed to record in a log file the date and time and the name and verification result from each scanned QR code in a smart health card. Why is that? Because the verification result is not the same as the details of the batch numbers and the dates of when the various shots were obtained. So that would help our user group because George Mason University does require each physical visitor to come in and show at least the first time they enter their vaccination record. And right now we're using a paper log, and I think it'd be a lot faster if we had an automatic log in the Verifier app. Now, been talking about a lot of serious stuff here. I want to talk about a game called Munzie, which is also based on QR codes, at least in part. It's an outdoor game, and it is based on finding small QR codes. This one was about 1/2 inch on a side when I shot a picture of it. And they're found on stickers placed on outdoor objects. This one was placed on a lamppost in a parking lot, which is a fairly common sight for these things. Munzie game players use a free app called Munzie. Here's the icon for the app. It's a free app on iOS and Android. And it will display, the app will display a map of Munzie stickers in whatever area you want to look at. Now you notice there's, all the Munzie stickers have a letter M on them. Makes it real easy to recognize. At least in this map, they have an M indicating where the Munzie stickers are located. In addition, you'll notice over here on the George Washington Memorial Parkway, which is runs along the Potomac River, there's another one with a round, not square, but round form. And that's another type of Munzie we'll get to in just a moment. The big green button at the bottom, which I've circled here, is the capture button. And when you tap it, it will display a camera-like view so that you can point the app at a Munzie sticker you found, and it will scan the Munzie sticker and then give you credit for finding it. In the map, you can click on any sticker icon to see more info about that sticker. A pop-up appears, and sometimes it's useful information. I'm going to show you an example. You click that details button, and then you're going to see a screen like this. And it also includes a capture button. I've circled here at the bottom of this screen, but it'll show you whatever the person who placed the Munzie sticker wanted to say about it. And in this case, there's two key letters here, LP, and that stands for lamppost. So that tells you where to find the sticker. and that's pretty handy. Now, the round shape indicates what's called a virtual Munzie, which does not involve a sticker. They have locations, and some are temporary with a deadline, and they'll disappear once the deadline comes along. The icon, the circle, will contain a sand timer image, if that's the case. All virtual Munzie icons are circles. Here you see Interstate 66, very close to where I live. This is on the west side of Arlington County in Virginia. And you can see there's several of these things in a very short stretch of the interstate highway. To capture a virtual, you go to its locale, but you don't have to be standing right smack dab in the middle. They have a capture radius, and that's often 300 feet. So occasionally it's less, but you stand within that radius to capture to tap the capture button so you can get credit for capturing a virtual Munzie. And when you do tap a virtual Munzie icon to see details, the green capture button then becomes a V button for virtual. Now, the fact that these things are on a highway raises a safety issue. I don't mean nobody's crazy enough to try to walk on the highway to get to this virtual Munzie. But if you're driving on the highway, you might be tempted to capture a bunch of them, and there's no easy way to do that in the Munzie app. So do not try to capture virtual Munzies while driving a car. I know it's tempting, particularly because the interstate highways around Washington, D.C., including the Beltway, are just packed with virtual Munzies. But it's really unnerving to try to figure out if you're close enough and also tap the button at the appropriate time in order to capture them while driving. The temptation is going to be very, very attractive. It's not easy to resist, but I'm going to tell you flat out, the danger is considerable. Now, there's other places where there are a lot of Munzies. And you're seeing a map of a few blocks of Falls Church, Virginia here, with a whole bunch of round Munzies shown. In addition, if you happen to use the Munzie app to look at the National Mall in Washington, D.C., you would see over 2,000. In fact, it's very difficult to see the streets because there are so many Munzies, virtual Munzies there. Now, this area in Falls Church had over 50. And when you see a Munzie with a check mark, it means you've already found it. I have already found all the virtuals and some of the sticker Munzies in Falls Church, and that's why these are all coded red and have the check mark in it. The advantage of Munzies being so close together is you can walk or park in one place and capture over a dozen, and sometimes a lot more than that. So that turns out to be that learning point that I learned in my month of playing the Munzie game turns out to be why I did as well as I did. And here's how the Munzie works in a competitive sense. Each individual capture that earns you some number of points. Different types of Munzies have different point values. So some Munzies are more valuable than others, and you learn to recognize and go after the most valuable ones. And the Munzie app also includes a feature called a leaderboard, and it keeps track of the top 25,000 Munzie players ranked by the earning of points. When I started playing in January of this year, in 4 weeks, I earned 145,000 points, mostly by capturing virtual Munzies. There's a reason for, in addition to the point value of various Munzies, it turns out that Munzie stickers fade with exposure to the elements and in particular to sunlight. So if you end up purchasing or printing Munzie stickers, if you really get addicted to this game, I would urge you to put them on the north side the lamppost or the whatever, the sign, whatever else you put them on, because they're less likely to, they won't be exposed to sunlight, and they're less likely to be faded due to sunlight. And my position on the leaderboard, I got down to position 10,700, and that was 145,000 points. I did look at the top of the leaderboard, and they were well above 1 million points. So some people really get addicted, and it takes them years to get to that point. I mentioned that Munzie stickers can fade. In the details screen, if you tap the history tab, which I circled here, you're going to see the most recent find date. And if it's more than a year in the past, there's a chance that the sticker has faded. So I don't advise making those your top priority, those old stickers. Now, how do Munzie stickers get placed in the first place? You can print free Munzie stickers on your own mailing labels page, or you can buy laminated stickers from the company that produced the Munzie app. They want you to get stickers. They want you to get hooked, and that's their cash income. If you print them yourself, you can place lamination on top of the sticker to minimize that weather damage and the sunlight damage. Okay, now back to the more serious stuff. How can we create QR codes? There's many different ways to do it, as it turns out. Let me introduce you first to LibreOffice version 7. The applications in that Office suite support creation of URL and text QR codes. Now, the type text basically allows you to create any type of QR code at all, or just encode text in a QR code. Here's how you do it. In LibreOffice Writer, LibreOffice Presenter, which I'm using now, you pull down the Insert menu and select Object, and a sub-menu appears. In that sub-menu, which I've shown you here, you can select, excuse me, I haven't shown you that, but once you select QR code in the sub-menu, this dialog box pops up. And here you can specify the URL or the text that you want to encode, and you have an error correction level that you can choose. That's redundancy of the information in the QR code. The lowest level of error correction does not include redundancy. I typically use medium when I use this particular feature in LibreOffice. The app inserts the generated QR code in your document as a graphic, just like a photo or any other drawing, and you can resize that graphic to fit your needs. I typically use, in LibreOffice Writer, I use 1.6 inches or 2 inches. Both of those can be scanned very easily when the page is printed. There are websites that you can use to create QR codes. They will download the QR code to your downloads directory. Here's one of them. It's called qrcodegenerator.com. If you want to use it, you can scan the QR code and go directly there on your phone. Now, I'm going to turn off, I think it's possible that the video panel is hiding that, and so I'm going to turn off the video panel so you can see the complete QR code. This particular website can create 13 QR code content types. Frankly, I don't think you need more than 5, but some of you who get into it may find the esoteric types more useful. This provides level control of error correction. This site, goqr.me, and that's the one I use most of the time, so I can introduce some redundancy into my QR codes. You can scan this QR code to go to that site on your phone right now. Incidentally, if you're not scanning any of this, you will receive a PDF copy of this slide deck probably sometime next week. Depends on when I can get it done, and depends on when Judy can send it out. QRcode.me can only create 9 QR content types. Again, I think if you use more than 5, you're really going off into a high level of expertise. I'll put it that way. And as I mentioned earlier, both sites download the generated code to your computer so that you can use it. There are apps in your phones that will create QR codes. The Android 11 and 12 Contacts app can create a view card QR code of any contact record in your contacts database. The Contacts app itself has a button that will allow you to create a QR code of when you open any record in Contacts. That button will appear, and then it will store the generated QR code on your phone. Now, Android 11, 12 settings. If you are logged into a Wi-Fi network, Android 11 and 12 settings can create a Wi-Fi QR code for login to that Wi-Fi network. And that QR code will include the network name and the password. It makes it super easy for somebody else to log into the Wi-Fi network. It'll look like this. It'll have a generally blue color, and it'll have that little icon in the middle that is intended to be a representation of Wi-Fi. Now, apps. The Qrbot app, which I recommended earlier, it will support 11 QR code content types on Apple phones and tablets. This list is not a complete list. You have to actually scroll the page down to see the last one. But website, contact, Wi-Fi, and email are probably the ones you'll use the most. There's also a content type that will automatically dial a phone number. That's called call. It's down here in the lower left corner. The app can create other code types, and they put this screen in with the lock image on these types if you buy the Pro version. So for instance, it'll do PDF 417, Data Matrix, Aztec, ITF, and all the others that I mentioned during this presentation. But you have to buy those. Now, this is very important. Both websites fail to create a completely valid QR code for logging into a Wi-Fi network. I downloaded the QR code for my home network, and it failed, and I found out why. In addition, the Qrbot app that I just mentioned also fails to create a completely valid QR code for logging into a Wi-Fi network. Again, I determined that by testing it. I found a workaround. One of those is Android 12. It will generate a completely valid QR code for the Wi-Fi network to which your Android phone is connected currently. So that's one way to get it done right, to make it useful for other people. But there are other ways. So, as I mentioned, if you're using the the settings app, you log into the Wi-Fi network manually. In Android settings, connections, you confirm the device is connected to that Wi-Fi network by, and here I've circled the name as well as the Wi-Fi heading under connections. You tap that word Wi-Fi, and when it provides you details about that particular Wi-Fi connection, you click the gear icon to the right of the network name. And the next screen you see will look like this. It'll have a little icon at the bottom called QR code. You tap that icon and it'll generate the QR code for you. Now, since this was for my Wi-Fi network, I blocked out part of the QR code so you can't scan it. But most of you were too far away to log in anyway. Then in order to share it, you click the Save As Image button in the lower left corner, which I've circled here for you. And that'll save it in your recent photos. Now we get to iOS, and it turns out it's not quite so easy. iOS doesn't have a way built into settings or anywhere else to generate a QR code for the Wi-Fi network that you happen to be connected to. But there is an app, and it took me testing of several apps to find this one. This is a free app published by, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I know the middle word is pronounced Win. It's called on your phone is called QR Scanner, and there's the icon on your phone. Its name in the App Store is Barcode QR code scanner. So when you search for it, I would type QR code scanner in the App Store and see what comes up, but you're looking for the one with that particular name. As I say, on your phone, it's going to be called QR Scanner when you install it. And this one is capable of making a completely valid QR code for the Wi-Fi network to which you are connected. You can find that app in the App Store. It happens that I created a QR code which, when scanned by your Apple device, will open the App Store to the page on which the app is described. And it'll have the install button. So if you want to install it right now, simply scan this code and you'll get there very fast. All right, let's go on to the next one. Here's a summary of ways user groups might find to use QR codes to help maintain members and attract members, to make them feel welcome. You can, if your membership application is online, you can create a URL QR code that will open that application on a phone. And that would be useful, say, on your website, and maybe on maybe printed or otherwise displayed in your meeting site. For that meeting site, for the user group website, URL for that website is going to be very valuable in flyers. And if you have a URL for logging into the Zoom meeting for the club, you could also encode that in a QR code. You could, if you want to tell people in flyers or on your website how to find the physical address for the meeting site, just create a V card for that, and they can scan the V card, and that information will go directly into their contacts app on their devices. Something that I've become very enthusiastic about lately, using a public Google Calendar to provide information about the date and time and subjects at user group meetings. And if you create a public Google Calendar, you can find that the Google Calendar provides a URL allowing people to access that Google Calendar through a website. They don't even have to have the Google Calendar app on their device. They can look at the website whenever they want by accessing that URL. So you can provide that URL in a QR code. Finally, if you have Wi-Fi at your meeting site, you can publicize that Wi-Fi login by printing a QR code for it at the meeting site. And that makes it easier to log in because people don't have to type the Wi-Fi password. As I think I mentioned earlier, the Wi-Fi password where my club meets is 30 characters long, and just it's not English at all. So it's very difficult to type, and it's very easy to make typos. Here's another use that my daughter taught me about this. She and her husband were stationed at Fort Benning in Georgia for a while, and apparently down there it was very popular for people in base housing to create a QR code for logging into their Wi-Fi network, and then they would put it into this kind of needlework and frame it so that people could scan it when they came into the house. And it looked, I thought that was a very interesting idea. She sent me this photo. Okay. Now, it turns out I produce a slideshow that's run before each meeting of my club. And we decided we would go all in on QR codes. So we have at the top, for each of the 2 organizations that meets there, we have a way to access the membership form in case a visitor wants to join. We have a way to access the street address for paying by check if they want to pay by check instead of paying in cash at the meeting. And finally, a way to log into the local Wi-Fi for each of those 2 clubs, because there's a separate Wi-Fi network for each club in the meeting site. And those Wi-Fi QR codes do include the Wi-Fi password, so that the person who scans that code does not need to type it in. Now, creating QR codes for installing apps, and I've shown you some of those. I'm going to show you some more as we go on. It's a little bit difficult. It ends up being a normal URL QR code, but the idea is that you use your web browser to figure out the URL on the App Store or on the Play Store. So how do you do that? Well, there's a site for Android, play.google.com. And I've shown you the URL. I've also put it in this QR code for you to scan if you want to go to it right now using your phone or tablet. You can go there. They have a search button that allows you to put in the app name or whatever else you do to identify it. And then you can access a page that's devoted to that app. When you do that, when you get to that point where that app is described in detail and no other apps are on that page, that's when the URL at the top of your web browser is the URL you need. You convert that to a QR code, and then anybody who scans that using their Android phone, it'll automatically open the Play Store to the page for the app. The same thing exists for Apple users. There is a website that I show you here. You use the search capability to search for the app name, and when it shows you that app and you click on it to provide details, so no other app or link or search result is displayed, that URL is the one that you encode into a QR code. When somebody scans that QR code with their Apple device, it will open the App Store to the page on which that app is described so that they can download it. So that's how you do that creation of QR codes for installing an app. And you're not, it turns out some of the web pages for creating QR codes do have what they call a separate QR code content type for apps. Don't use that. You're using a standard URL type QR code. That's all you need. Apple users have another option. If you use the App Store on your device to locate the app that you want to recommend to others, you can obtain the URL from the app screen like this, which is for Qrbot. And how do you do that? How do you obtain that URL? Well, you tap the share button, which I've circled for you, on that screen. And when you do that, a pop-up appears at the bottom. In that pop-up, click on Copy Link, which I've circled for you. Paste the copied link URL, which is now in your copy buffer, into an email and send it to yourself. And that's the same URL that you would get by accessing that website that I mentioned on the previous slide. So there's a couple of ways to do it. Now, when I've taught this previously, sometimes I get questions, and it turns out when I got this question, I didn't really have a good answer on hand. But one audience member mentioned that she had heard of bogus QR codes placed on parking payment machines. And it covers up the legitimate payment QR code that's used to pay for parking. Now, why would somebody do that? Well, they're trying to redirect your money to someplace you don't want it to go. In other words, they're thieves that do this. So she asked, how can we tell if it's a bogus QR code? Now, you have to do two things. And one of them is gathering knowledge from the proper QR code vendor. And the other one is you need a free app. I'm going to talk about that app too. On your phone, that free app is called Barcode Scanner. It's one of the older barcode related apps on the Play Store. Here's the icon for the app, and it's published by a company called IDP.net. I admit the title of this particular app is very generic, so knowing the IDP.net publisher is very useful to distinguish it from all the other apps with the same name. It will scan traditional linear barcodes and 2D codes. As I mentioned, it's published by IDP.net. It reads and displays the content of QR codes, and this is important, does not start an app to perform what the QR code intends, which means it can scan a bogus QR code without causing you any financial grief. There are other apps on both the App Store and the Play Store that will scan QR codes without performing what the QR code intends you to perform on your portable device. They are generally the older apps. This app has been around for a very long time, hasn't even been updated in a while, but it's still very useful. Now, what did I mean when I said special knowledge? You have to find out what a legitimate payment barcode contains, because the Barcode Scanner app will show you the contents, and you have to recognize, is it the real stuff or is it bogus? So you need to contact the parking vendor. Now, that's often for public parking on a street, that's often the local jurisdiction, and you'd have to talk to their parking payment operation. It's probably not documented on a website, so you probably have to talk to a human being. Now, it turns out it might be easy. It may be that the legit payment QR code mentions the local jurisdiction name. So if it's Arlington, that word will be in the name. Admittedly, there's 14 Arlingtons in the United States, so you have to know which one you're in. Or it might mention a vendor contracted by the local jurisdiction to manage the payment fee process. So you have to find that out. What's the legit barcode? And then you use the Barcode Scanner app when you're about to pay to see if the QR code content matches the legitimate payment info or not. Also, I happen to think if you do, using this process, identify a bogus QR code, you should let the parking vendor know where that bogus QR code is located so that they can go replace it with a legitimate one. Now, basically, I've run out of content, so what I'm going to show you once again are the QR codes that will let you install various apps that I've mentioned today. The Qrbot app for both Android and Apple. Here are the QR codes to scan if you haven't done it already. Its name in the App Store for Apple devices is QR code in Barcode Scanner. It does not mention the word Qrbot, but once you install that app on your device, it is called Qrbot. The Commonhealth Wallet App, only available for Android at this time. The website for Commonhealth does mention that they're working on an app for Apple devices, but I checked last week on July 5th and it wasn't available yet. If you live in New York, the New York State Excelsior Pass Wallet app is available for both Apple and Android. Here are the QR codes if you want to install that app. The Smart Health Card Verifier app is available for both Apple and Android, and here are the QR codes you can scan to open the page for that app and then install it. Frankly, for most people, I don't think it's worthwhile to get this. But we have several members of my user group have it installed simply because our landlord requires us to ensure that anybody who visits for the first time after being vaccinated can show us proof in the form of a smart health card, and we can confirm that it's valid. Now, if you want to look at the online list of smart health card trusted issuer organizations, here is the URL for doing that. And you can scan the QR code here to open that web page on your portable device. If you want to try the Muncie game, frankly, I think if you live in a city or a suburb, I think you might enjoy it. So here are the QR codes for installing the Muncie app on your portable device for Apple and Android. It is I said it before, I'll say it again, it is a free app. All of these things that I've pointed out today are free apps. Well, that was an interesting transition. Here's the IDPnet Barcode Scanner app for Android. This will read a great, identify and read a great variety of codes, including the Aztec code, which is used, as far as I can tell, is used primarily in healthcare. And here's the one that I recommended from the Apple App Store for anybody who wants to create a valid Wi-Fi QR code on their phone. It's the QR scanner app, and it's important to know the publisher here because that again is a fairly generic app name. Now I'm going to mention my next public presentation. I'm going to present a new topic this Saturday, just a few days from now, for my club, the Potomac Area Technology and Computer Society, how to make a digital music mix file using Audacity, the free music editor application. I shouldn't say music, it'll edit any digital sound, but I think you'll find this is a lot of fun. I started making mixtapes when I was in college. Back then I was using real tape machines at the time and of course analog audio. But these days you can do it with Audacity and get it done more quickly and then save it and even make copies very easily. To do that, you need to contact our club president, and I provided an email address for doing that. We call it a guest pass, but we give you the Zoom details so you can participate via Zoom. As long as you're a member of an APCUG affiliated club, and all of you on this meeting are, you can obtain the guest pass by writing to that email address. You have to supply your full name, the city and state where you live, and the club you belong to. Now, if you scan this big old QR code, it is an email QR code that will literally open your email app on your portable device and write the email for you, except you have to, there are spaces reserved so you can fill in your name, your city and state, and the club to which you belong. So you might enjoy trying that email QR code. And I'll give you a moment to scan that. Otherwise, I'm done. And there's my email address. If you, we're gonna have some time to for questions, but you can write me later if something occurs to you later. And the URL of my club homepage, pataces.org. And that's it, folks. I imagine that there are some questions queued up. So let's see what we can do to answer those questions.
Hi there. I am the last man standing. The ghouls left. John had scheduled a grandson haircut appointment long after our usual ending time, so he's gone. If there are any questions for either the goals on cryptocurrency or comments, and any questions for John or comments on his outstanding QR code presentation. And I love the fact that I scheduled 2 presentations today that I didn't know much about and learned a whole heck of a lot about both of them. Please send them to me and I will forward them to the speakers to be answered. And they will be out with the follow-up material. My email address is jtaylour@apcug.org. And thank you very much for sticking with us today. And Joanne, yours will be the first question, okay? So have a good afternoon. Have lunch if you haven't had it. I will be finally having breakfast. And we'll see you next week at our Linux workshop. And the last one of the month will all be all about Apple apps.